Welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. As the war in Ukraine continues, Kyiv is watching developments far beyond Europe, including events in Venezuela that have prompted strong reactions from Moscow. Now, this feeds into a broader debate about global alignments, Western resolve, and the cost of accommodating authoritarian regimes. Joining us on TVP World is Vira Konstantynova, former foreign policy advisor to the chairman of the Ukrainian Parliament and founder and chairwoman of KONSTANTA R&D group. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good day. Glad to be with you.
So a lot has happened over the weekend, and one of the things that we've noticed is how Russia's been condemning the U.S. operation in Venezuela and demanding Maduro's release. For Moscow, what's really at stake here? Is it their connection with the Venezuelan leader, or is it more of a trying to save face when it comes to prestige and leverage?
Let's look at this from the geopolitical perspective. First of all, yes, definitely Russian influence in Venezuela, on Venezuela, is reshaped right now. So I would say it's a sharp on prestige. It's I would say excess shock, because Venezuela is one of top 5 countries with significant oil reserves, and definitely oil is a very important part of Russian strategy of resilience to Western sanctions. So I would say the main message from this operation in terms of American perspective and in terms of so-called allies of Russia as well as China is that Russia will not able to save any dictator. I would say it was reasonable for Syrian dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad, then partners and at the South Caucasus dimension. So maybe the main idea and main income and outcome of this operation is the understanding that Russia will not save anyone. So it could be very interesting how, for example, Chinese foreign ministry reacts on this operation, or how, for example, Iranian leadership perceives this operation. So in my term, in my understanding, I would say that from one side, it's a shock for Russia, and from other side, it's a message for Russian allies that Russia leadership is unable to save you in any case.
Right. I think you mentioned something very strong here, that it is another showcase that, despite the words coming out from Russia, they really can't do anything to save their allies. Now, one thing that I observed that I do find quite interesting is how the Ukrainian President Zelensky responded to that as well. We do have a statement from the president himself. Let's take a look.
How should one react to this? What can I say? If it's possible to deal with dictators this way, then the US knows what to do next.
Now, when it comes to how to deal with dictators, I think there's no illusion of who Zelensky has been talking about. But do you think that this is also somewhat of a message to his European allies that's been calling like Vladimir Putin or Lukashenko illegitimate leaders, but are more reluctant to pull the trigger or do something as dramatic as what the United States have been doing?
Definitely it's a message, because from one side we see that if you try to tolerate dictatorship, you would have very increased losses and I would say bills for dealing with consequences and circumstances of this dictatorship. So from one perspective, I believe that it's important that United States, that European partners, they look at this situation from the perspective of foreign interference when it comes to the issue of human rights violations or illegitimate dictator on the top of leadership of the country. But from other side, we have a problem of justification, and I believe that the Russian side as well as Chinese side would use this option to try to demonstrate their inability from one side, and from other side inadequate response that you have mentioned from the Western side. So to be clear, I do believe that Maduro was a dictator from one side, and I do believe there is a human rights violation within the Venezuelan society. And Venezuelans, they received the opportunity to build democracy. But from the perspective of propaganda activities, it's very important to be aware of it, that Russia and China would use this precedent in their aggressive policy dimension. That's very important, and I believe it's important to underline the inability to project power far beyond the Eurasian from the Russian perspective.
All right. Something that I'm also looking at is whether or not the world is going to start reconsidering these kind of international law rhetoric, but progressively look at the rethinking power politics, be it looking at the situation with the war in Ukraine, be it Europeans' lack of resolve to actually utilize the frozen Russian assets or actually put a stronger action on these Russian shadow fleet conducting hybrid warfare. Do you think it's high time that perhaps Europe also reconsider maybe actually taking action, or do you think that the need for these international law is still going to hinder any substantial action going forward?
It's an urgent call from one side, definitely, and it's obvious that as long as Russian dictatorship would be in place, we would have problems. I mean, in terms of international community. Again, currently we see the interesting situation. We have Colombia that calls for urgent UN meeting. Definitely, it's important to observe the situation from international law perspective. And in terms of further steps, it's important to understand that the United States wouldn't expand their operation in Venezuela. It was stated by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and President Trump as well. So I believe that it's a new beginning for Venezuela from one side, but again, there are a lot of countries from Latin America, from other regions of the world who questioned the legitimacy and the justification of this operation. And it's important to have a dialogue right now with them to explain why the dictatorship couldn't be tolerated. Afterwards, we would say, I hope we would see some kind of consensus in international area, but international law should prevail in any case. That's important to notice.
Right. Now, turning to Kyiv, we're recently seeing Zelensky describing the government reshuffle as rotations instead of dismissals. What do you think the president is trying to resolve and what kind of strategic problem is trying to address with this reshuffle?
I'm very positive on this current, I would say, rotation in our government, in our presidential administration from one side, because of understanding and my personal position that despite the outcome of a recent round of diplomatic activities, Ukraine as a state should be prepared for the negative scenario as well as for basic or positive scenario. And again, our colleagues from our neighborhood, I mean our partners like Poland, like Baltic states, should also be prepared for potential problems with negotiations, because Russia is currently looking for a pretext in order to convene that Ukraine is not ready for a peace deal. That's important to notice, and our governmental authorities, they had posted a lot of information devoted to the attempts of Russian Federation to destroy this diplomatic track. We should be aware that any appointments in Ukraine right now, they should be in the line of understanding that we can achieve peace, but at the same time, we should be prepared for continuing the war. So these recent appointments, I would perceive from such a position, not more.
Right. A lot of people have been pointing to Budanov as a very good appointment because, well, outside of serving in military, he's also quite adept at diplomatic efforts as well. So it could provide like a very well two-pronged approach to be it having to engage militarily or have to engage it diplomatically. But when it comes to other appointees, do you think there's some way we can read into the tea leaves looking at the appointees to kind of speculate where Ukraine is trying to direct things and put their emphasis on?
We should also be aware, from one side, we have problems with energy right now. So there is an announcement of appointment of Mr. Shmyhal, former Prime Minister of Ukraine, as the Minister for Energy. And it's important to have Mr. Fedorov, Minister for Digital Transformation, on the position for Minister for Defense. So I believe there is a significant shift in terms of understanding that we need professional government from one side, and we need a very powerful government. Cooperation between ministries, between ministers within the cabinet of ministers is rather important right now, and unity is rather important right now. So in terms of practical solution of the request from the society, I believe it's a great appointments. And definitely we need to be aware that Verkhovna Rada, our parliament, should vote for ministers named. But in any case, I believe it would be confirmed in any case. And again, taking into account the functions of Chief of Staff and Mr. Budanov as a new head of Chief of Staff, there is a significant shift on the diplomatic track, despite, his military background. Minister Kyslytsa, Deputy Minister Kyslytsa would be appointed as the first deputy of the head of presidential office. That's also a message that we pay great attention to the diplomatic track. So we'll see how it would go on, but Ukraine would prepare for any scenarios in any case.
Right. Coming back to the international theater, a lot of people have been describing recent developments as a Cold War 2.0, where factions are clearly forming. And with the recent announcement by the U.S. Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, pointing at directing at Iran next, do you think that this might also shift Moscow's calculus going forward, now seeing that things have seemed to accelerate it a little bit and America is more likely to take action than making sure that everything just stays the status quo?
I think that this administration, President Trump administration, is able to take any steps they are looking for or estimated to do. But again, we need to understand that Iran is also a problem for security of partners of the United States of America in the Middle East. And we also have North Korea as well as a problem of general global security. So Iran is a potential target as well, but I believe that it would be a regional issue. I can rely on the estimation devoted to the recent visit of Prime Minister Netanyahu to Washington and negotiation between Netanyahu and President Trump. So definitely, the United States is rely on their partners in the regions, different regions of the world, but at the same time, they will support their partners in terms of any possible developments. We'll see how it would go on devoted to Iran, but again, for Iranian leadership, it's a great signal that they should be prepared as well for any consequences of their aggressive policy around the globe.
All right. Thank you so much for your input and insight. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on TVP World.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.